In the name of God, who is infinite love, beloved, and love overflowing. Amen. So Epiphany celebrates the manifestation of Jesus to the Gentile world. And as this feast day always seems to fall during the week, we are never together to have an extra celebration over it. In larger churches, they may have special concerts and such, or even song. Epiphany was originally a winter pagan celebration until the 4th century. Christians attached a new meaning to the festivities, calling it the Feast of Lights. The word epiphany comes from the Greek word, of course, epiphaneia, meaning appearance or manifestation, like a light bulb, moment of inspiration or understanding. I don't know if cartoons do that stuff anymore. In the old days, in the old cartoons, somebody would have an idea and then bing, a light bulb would go off. All through the latter part of Advent, we imagine the figures of Mary and Joseph moving closer to the stable. And so what you may have noticed is that our creche figures have moved from the floor up to the table and now are in the stable. The baby Jesus appears on whichever day the particular church celebrates their first Christmas service. But at the same time, not only does the Holy Family move, but the kings usually move. We had them over here in front of the Aumbry, and because we're so limited in space, they went from here to there in a heartbeat. I mean, most people think, well, that's a spiritual journey I like. Let's learn this quick and get it over with. But here they are. They have finally arrived on our nativity table. And finally, as I say, January 6th is the actual day that we celebrate Epiphany. That's 2 days from now. But so today we're doing it. Today we're celebrating Epiphany. Now, here's the thing about the 3 kings. We 3 kings of Orient are. They were probably very knowledgeable astrologers or astronomers from Persia or Babylon, but not really kings as in monarchs. The gifts they brought of gold, frankincense, and myrrh represent kingship, priesthood, and healing. All 3 things that we see in Jesus. And the religion of these highly respected men was Zoroastrianism, one of the oldest monotheistic religions. The core tenets involve ethical living, as in good thoughts, good words, good deeds. And if you saw the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, you will hear those tenets quoted several times because Freddie Mercury, the lead singer of the rock band Queen, came from a practicing Zoroastrian family. So good thoughts, good thoughts, good words, good deeds. So these 3 wise men were Gentiles, considered, from the Jewish point of view, because anybody who was not Jewish was considered a Gentile. They were from foreign lands, yet here they were to honor this little Jewish baby who would be named Jesus. The Hebrew people had their scriptures, which spoke of a coming Messiah, but these foreigners, people of the Zoroastrian faith, read the stars and had their own stories of the coming of the divine in their midst. The wise men follow the stars because the star is a divine sign of divine light. And God speaks to them in the language and symbolism that they are most familiar with. So on Epiphany, we celebrate the fact, this is so important, that God meets all of humanity wherever we are. Just say that again. God meets humanity wherever we are. The other night, my bestie and I watched a documentary about the possibility of Jesus spending time in India, where Jesus is respected as a great prophet by the Muslims, a divine being by the Hindus. And though there were some aspects of the film I questioned, I wondered afterwards if perhaps Jesus had more contact with those wise men than we have ever thought about before. I wonder if the years that we know absolutely nothing about Jesus, from his age of the time when he was caught in the temple speaking with the elders around 12-ish or so, to the time of 30, we have no idea what he was doing or what he was learning during that period of time. Perhaps he stayed in touch with those wise men. Perhaps it could happen he may have learned something from them over the years. How interesting would that be? That would mean that Jesus would have been exposed to religious beliefs other than Judaism. It could be he was exposed to beliefs of Zoroastrianism, and perhaps even other religions in that area as well. There were many. You may not have thought about this, but Zoroastrianism has had a large influence on Judaism, because many of the Jews who were leaders back in 597, the 6th century, were taken prisoner and put into exile in Babylon, where they practice Zoroastrianism. You cannot raise a generation full of people and not have that next door neighbor faith affect how you interpret your own faith. And so I wonder if perhaps Jesus picked up even more than the average Jewish person would have during that time that we know so little about him. Things that make you go, As you know, I deeply appreciate the commonalities between enlightened beings or mystics, between all the different religions. Those mystics value experience of the divine over dogma. They aren't threatened by people of other faiths. They aren't threatened by their belief systems. And since they aren't concerned about maintaining religious borders, they're open to learn from one another. What this says to me is that God's wisdom moves, searches, and risks being misunderstood. There is no place that God can't or won't go. Remember what Jesus said, the wind or spirit of God blows where it chooses, and you hear the sound of it, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes. Those more likely to misunderstand and feel threatened by the wisdom of other faiths from other religions are those who either use religion as a tool for personal power or have never traveled beyond their own literalistic interpretation of their own scriptures. In other words, they are unmovable in mind and heart, unlike God's wisdom, or as the Bible would say, they are hard-hearted, unmovable. So at Epiphany, we celebrate that God's wisdom, known in the Greek as Sophia, right? I love the old author Phyllis Tickle, who is a highly well-read scholar who's passed now. She used to say that the Holy Trinity was not just about two men and a bird. Sophia, the wisdom of God, is the feminine face of God. And she goes and touches anyone she wants. She blows wherever she will with the wisdom of God and touches everyone through many languages and many cultures, meeting us where we are. Yet the core message always seems to be the same: love, compassion, and kindness to all beings without exception. In effect, through the wise men, wisdom, Sophia, kneels at the foot of Christ in the person of Jesus of Nazareth. And after that encounter, the wise men return home by another country. It's right in the scriptures. Another way. Why? Because any encounter with the divine light of God always changes our direction in life. We are no longer the same person we were before that encounter. So beginning this new year then, we are invited to choose many different paths and make many different choices, some of which we have no idea is going to come our way yet, and that's okay. Some people may perhaps choose a healthier lifestyle in some way, shape, or form. I know I won't be buying ice cream anytime soon. Ate way too much of it during the Christmas break. Others may, in addition, choose some kind of new spiritual discipline. And perhaps those two choices will even coincide. There are lots of choices for intentions that might be a good idea for this new year of life. The question I want to throw out for all of us to consider is, where will our faith fit in these new intentions? How will we each follow the divine light? How will we practice openness to Sophia as she travels to and fro, alighting on each of our souls with the desire to help us evolve? You know, if you're not evolving, you're going backwards or you're dying. So we want to keep evolving. And in light of what's happening in the world today, I think it's important to ask, in what ways are we willing to cross the barriers we may have to receive the gifts of divine wisdom, so that in our own way, we can foster peace and goodwill among all people? That's a good question to ask ourselves. Amen.